pump it up like the Goodyear blimp. Make you holler for $1, that's the way I've been. Gold links and minks and shrimp dinners on the bayou. Them's all the things that I ain't gonna buy you.
No, I have not seen the High Oaks explosion. Let me look it up. More than 1 dozen injured, 1 killed in explosion at manufacturing facility.
Work being done over that direction. All right, developing on WLWT, more than a dozen people were hospitalized and 1 was killed in a massive explosion at a metal and paint plant in the Cleveland area.
It happened before just 3 in the afternoon yesterday at the I. Schumann and Company.
I mean, I was in an explosion at our plant. I wasn't the culprit of it, but I was there when it happened. And I could tell you that story in Met class. I used to work with this guy named Greg, and Greg was a black guy. More on that in a little bit, but and I'm saying this because Greg was so afraid, because like generally when we worked on the melt deck, we kind of watched each other's back, and so I was on A and B line at that day, and he was on C line doing what we do. And generally, when you're on C line, he had to. It's a much smaller crucible than the other big furnaces. So like generally, it gets hotter faster, and it does. And we use it for like specialty metals and things like that for like special orders. A C line was like a special order line. Well, Greg wanted to take some lunch. So generally, when you're a melter, to take lunch, what you do is you heat it up a little bit. Basically, you go like 20 degrees Celsius over where you're supposed to hold it at, and then you turn the power off, and that buys you about half hour, 45 minutes, so you can go eat lunch, come back out, and turn the machine back on and be there with the machine. That's how basically we took lunch, because we were actually short-staffed at the time. So Greg goes and does this, but what Greg doesn't know is when he presses the button, because there's an emergency off button, he goes to press the emergency off button, it doesn't turn off, but with bad chance, the light burns out the exact moment he goes to turn the switch off. Right? So like the machine is still on, giving power to the metal, heating it up. But in his head, he thinks he turns it off. So Greg thinks he turns the machine off because the light burned out. And he goes and goes, sits down, eat lunch. Generally, on the melt deck, they didn't really give a fuck about how long you took at lunch, right? Like, nobody wanted to do our job. Our job was hot. It was sweaty. So, like, the boss man came in and you've been in there. We only got half hour for lunch. But if you're in there 45 minutes to an hour, nobody really cared. Nobody stepped on your toes, because most of the time the boss man couldn't do your job, right? Our job was very special. Like, only very few people worked, operated the crane and such. So Greg takes a 45-minute lunch. He comes back out, and as soon as you come back out, the first thing you want to do is you want to test the metal. You want to see how hot the metal is, and see if you need to turn the machine on or you need to hold it. Whatever you got to do to keep the metal at holding temperature. Because if you get it too hot, it burns through the liner. If you get it too cold, it does a thing called bridging. Bridging is basically when it starts to solidify in the actual crucible itself. Well, when Greg came back out, it was white. And like, when I tell you white, it was white. Because like, first thing I heard was like, I was about to go to lunch, because we generally didn't take lunch at the same time. So like, I was on A and B line. Next thing I hear, like, we had these PA systems in the plant, and he's like, Jordan, come to C line. So like, I was like, oh, whatever. Let me go to C line, right? Because it was just me and Greg on shift that night. And we go to C line, and Greg, and this is where I said he's a black guy. He was white as a ghost. Like, he was like this cup. Like, he was so afraid he was about to lose his job, because this was like 2007, right? 2000, I think it's 2007. It might have been at the tail end of 2006, but the new Tundra just came out, like the one with the I-Force with 365 horsepower, and Greg went and got him a new Tundra. Like, this was like 2 weeks after he got him a new Tundra. And and Greg also had kids. He had a wife and kids and stuff like that. He just got him a new truck. And Greg pointed it out to me because and I'm like, Greg, we can't hide this, because generally, like I was saying, we like if you mess up, like you do something wrong, we kind of watch each other's backs and, like, don't ask, don't tell, don't snitch on each other, because like this thing was bubbling white, because we had these big thick silver coats and gloves, and we had hard hats on. We had these face shields that came down over the hard hat. I looked into the metal, and it was white. It was like that, like just a pool of white, and it was so hot it melted the face shield, right? So we had to call Code Red. So it was like Code Red, C line, Code Red. And then when you call Code Red, all the bosses and everybody, the maintenance guys, everybody comes to wherever Code Red is. And basically, we had to start an emergency back pour. Back pour means that we had to get it out of the crucible. Because the reason it is, the worst thing you can do with liquid metal is add water to it. And the way you heat up liquid metal is through water-based coils. There's like this thing called mitrosol, and there's like this liner that goes and creates this almost cement-like texture. And behind the cement-like texture is like these big steel bands that they put water in, and they use electricity to heat the water up. And this is how they basically melt metal. And what will happen is if the metal gets too hot like it will eat through that liner and get to those metal bands. And what happens to those metal bands, they go rupture, and they're going to shoot water into the crucible itself. What happens when you drop water on a hot pan? You might in the chat. What happens when you drop water on a hot pan? It creates steam. It creates steam. It doesn't sizzle. It creates steam. Steam in an open atmosphere environment isn't nothing. It's like psh, it makes a little sizzle sound, little thing, whatever it might be. But if you put it where it can't, if you put it underneath 40 tons of metal that's liquid, it's going to try to find a way out, right? Because that steam creates pressure, and that pressure is going to pocket, and what it basically does is it explodes. So we're back pouring this, and what happens when you back pour is the melter's sitting up like this, and it basically has these hydraulic legs that go like this, and it slowly tips forward so you can pour the metal out of the spout into an ingot. You pour it into the ingot. As we're pouring this metal, there's a lid on top of it, kind of like a teacup. The weight shifts, and it burns a hole and gets into and breaks one of the water bands and shoots water into the metal. And it literally shoots the fucking... I'm not fucking with you. This is like a 2.5 ton metal lid that's got a big hydraulic arm that's holding this lid on. It blows this thing through the fucking roof with a shot of metal. It's like, boom! It sounded like a bomb went off. Like, it literally threw the lid through the roof of the building. It's like, holy shit. Regardless, nobody got hurt. But, like, that was the plant explosion story. And Greg didn't lose his job or anything because maintenance deemed that the light had burned out on the actual power box on the emergency stop. So, like, it was equipment malfunction. But it ended up costing, like, shit, millions of dollars. Looks like this stream's getting deleted.